Money can buy everything except love, loyalty, and trust. Marcus Wellington had learned this the hard way. At 42, he controlled a business empire worth billions, commanded respect in boardrooms across 3 continents, and could make or break careers with a single phone call. Yet he stood helpless in his marble-floored mansion, watching his 8-year-old son retreat further into silence each day. The parade of nannies had been endless. 23 in 2 years. Each one arrived with impeccable credentials, designer clothes, and practiced smiles. Each one left within months, defeated by a little boy who had built walls higher than his father's skyscrapers. Some quit after finding their expensive shoes filled with paint. Others fled after discovering their carefully planned schedules rewritten in crayon. A few simply vanished in the middle of the night, leaving behind resignation letters and unpaid phone bills. Then came Zara. She arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning with a worn leather bag, a genuine smile, and something none of the others possessed, the ability to see past the mansion's cold elegance to the broken family living within its walls. She didn't know that her first day would change not just one life, but 3. She couldn't have imagined that within months, she would hold the hearts of both father and son in her gentle hands, or that her presence would awaken emotions that had been buried beneath years of grief, guilt, and carefully constructed barriers. This is the story of how love found its way into a house that had forgotten how to laugh, and how a woman who had nothing became everything to a family that had everything but happiness. The Wellington mansion stood like a fortress against the Seattle skyline, its glass walls reflecting the gray morning clouds that seemed permanently settled over the city. Inside, Marcus Wellington paced across his home office, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the polished marble floor. The sound echoed through the vast space, a lonely rhythm that had become the soundtrack of his life. His phone buzzed for the 10th time that morning. Another nanny agency, another apology, another excuse. The latest candidate had lasted exactly 4 days before citing irreconcilable differences with the household dynamic and fleeing back to whatever comfortable suburban family she had abandoned for the promise of his generous salary. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar weight of exhaustion that had nothing to do with his sleepless nights spent building his empire. At 42, he had conquered markets, merged corporations, and turned his late father's modest real estate business into Wellington Enterprises, a global powerhouse worth $12 billion. He could negotiate deals that would make world leaders sweat, but he couldn't figure out how to connect with his own son. 8-year-old Tyler Wellington was a mystery wrapped in superhero pajamas and covered in finger paint. Ever since his mother's death 3 years ago, the boy had become increasingly withdrawn, cycling through behavioral issues that seemed designed to drive away anyone who tried to get close. The latest incident involved hiding rubber snakes in the previous nanny's bed, resulting in a midnight screaming match that woke half the neighborhood. "Sir?" Marcus looked up to find his housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, standing in the doorway with her usual expression of patient concern. She had been with the family for 15 years, watching Tyler grow from a babbling toddler into the troubled child he had become. If anyone understood the depths of their household's dysfunction, it was the quiet woman who had held everything together through the worst of times. "The agency called again," she said softly. "They're having difficulty finding suitable candidates." Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "Suitable candidates. Right. What they mean is they're tired of their people running away screaming." He walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Elliott Bay, watching the ferry boats cut through the choppy water. "Maybe I should just homeschool him myself." Mrs. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. "With respect, sir, when was the last time you spent more than 10 minutes with Tyler without discussing his behavior reports?" The question hit harder than any corporate takeover attempt. Marcus turned back to face her, seeing the truth reflected in her gentle but firm expression. He couldn't remember the last time he and Tyler had simply talked, laughed, or done anything that resembled a normal father-son relationship. Every interaction had become a negotiation, every conversation a conflict. "There is one more option," Mrs. Chen continued, pulling a folded piece of paper from her apron pocket. "My church has a community board. Someone posted a notice yesterday." Marcus took the paper, expecting another formal resume from another overqualified child development specialist. Instead, he found a simple handwritten note on plain white paper: "Experienced childcare provider seeking position." Good with difficult children. References available upon request. Zara Johnson. Below it was a phone number written in neat, careful handwriting. This is it? Marcus held up the paper. No credentials? No list of degrees? No mention of previous celebrity families she's worked for? Sometimes the best help comes in simple packages, Mrs. Chen replied with a small smile. She comes to our church sometimes. Quiet girl, but good with the children there. They light up when they see her. Marcus studied the note again, his business instincts warring with his desperation. Every fiber of his corporate training screamed against hiring someone based on a church recommendation and a handwritten note. But, then, he thought of Tyler, currently locked in his room after painting his bathroom walls with chocolate pudding, and felt his resistance crumble. Call her, he said finally. Set up an interview for this afternoon. 3 hours later, Marcus found himself waiting in his study, having changed his shirt twice and wondering why he was nervous about interviewing a nanny. He had faced down Fortune 500 CEOs without breaking a sweat, but the prospect of finding someone who could reach his son left him feeling vulnerable in a way that money couldn't fix. The doorbell chimed, and he heard Mrs. Chen's footsteps crossing the foyer. A moment later, she appeared in his doorway with a young woman who immediately defied every expectation he had built in his mind. Zara Johnson was probably in her late 20s, with rich brown skin that seemed to glow despite the overcast day. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a modest blue dress that was clearly well cared for but not expensive. What struck him most were her eyes, warm brown and completely unintimidated by the opulence surrounding her. Mr. Wellington, she said, stepping forward with a confident smile. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. Her voice carried a slight southern accent, soft and melodious. Marcus found himself standing straighter, suddenly, aware that his usual intimidating presence seemed to have no effect on her whatsoever. Please, sit, he said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs across from his desk. I have to be honest, Ms. Johnson. Your approach is unconventional. Most candidates come with extensive portfolios and references from other high-profile families. Zara settled into the chair with an ease that surprised him. I imagine they do. But I'm not most candidates, Mr. Wellington. I don't have a degree in child psychology or experience with celebrity families. What I have is 27 years of being the oldest of 6 children, 4 years of working at a children's crisis center, and an honest love for kids who are hurting. The directness of her answer caught him off guard. Tyler is challenging, he said carefully. We've had significant turnover in the past 2 years. 23 nannies in 2 years, Zara replied calmly. Mrs. Chen mentioned it when she called. Marcus blinked. She told you that, and you still wanted the job? Mr. Wellington, a child doesn't go through 23 caretakers because he's bad. He does it because he's in pain. Zara leaned forward slightly, her expression growing serious. I've worked with kids who've been through trauma. They test every adult who enters their life, waiting for the moment when they'll be abandoned again. The question isn't whether Tyler will test me. It's whether I'll pass. For the first time in months, Marcus felt a spark of hope. This woman, this stranger who had appeared with nothing but a handwritten note, understood something that all the credentialed professionals had missed. Tyler wasn't broken, he was protecting himself. What would you do differently? He asked. Zara was quiet for a moment, considering. I'd start by not trying to fix him. Tyler doesn't need to be fixed, Mr. Wellington. He needs to be seen, heard, and loved exactly as he is right now. The behavior will change when he feels safe enough to let his guard down. And how long does that usually take? There's no timeline for trust, she said simply. But I'm not in a hurry. I don't have another family lined up or a better offer waiting. If you hire me, I'm committed to Tyler for as long as it takes. Marcus found himself studying her face, looking for the catch, the hidden agenda, the sign that this was too good to be true. He had built his fortune on reading people, on spotting the angle everyone was working. But Zara Johnson seemed to have no angle except genuine care for a child she hadn't even met. I should probably mention, he said slowly, that the salary is quite substantial. More than most people make in several years combined. Zara's eyebrows rose slightly. That's generous, but I'd do this job for room and board if Tyler needed me to. The simple honesty of her statement hit him like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had shown interest in anything related to his family that wasn't motivated by money? Would you like to meet him? Marcus asked, surprising himself. Usually, he conducted several rounds of interviews before allowing any candidate near Tyler. I'd love to, Zara said, standing with that same easy grace. But, may I make a suggestion? Of course. Don't tell him I'm here for a job interview. Just introduce me as someone who wanted to meet him. Kids can smell desperation from miles away, and they know when adults are evaluating them. Let's just see what happens. Marcus nodded, feeling simultaneously impressed and terrified by her confidence. He led her through the mansion's winding hallways, past priceless artwork and designer furniture that suddenly felt cold and impersonal under her quietly assessing gaze. They found Tyler in the family room, sprawled on the floor in front of a massive television, surrounded by action figures in various states of battle. His dark hair, so much like Marcus's, was sticking up at odd angles, and there was still a faint smear of chocolate on his cheek from his earlier bathroom adventure. Tyler, Marcus said carefully, there's someone I'd like you to meet. The boy looked up with the wary expression that had become his default, ready to deploy whatever defensive mechanism seemed most appropriate for the threat level of the new adult. Hey, Tyler, Zara said, settling cross-legged on the floor without waiting for an invitation. Wow, that's an impressive battle scene you've got going on here. Are the good guys winning? Tyler blinked, clearly thrown off by her immediate presence in his space. Most adults stayed standing, maintaining the physical distance that reminded everyone of the power dynamic. But Zara had eliminated that barrier in seconds. It's not about good guys and bad guys, Tyler said slowly, testing. Sometimes the people you think are heroes are actually villains in disguise. That's very wise, Zara replied seriously. How can you tell the difference? You watch what they do when they think nobody's looking, Tyler said, his voice gaining confidence. Heroes are heroes even when there's no one around to see it. Marcus felt his throat tighten. How had his 8-year-old son developed such cynicism about the nature of people? And how was this stranger managing to draw out philosophical insights that Tyler had never shared with his own father? That's a pretty good test, Zara agreed. I bet you're good at figuring people out. Tyler shrugged, but Marcus could see the pleased flush spreading across his cheeks. Grown-ups usually think I don't notice stuff. But I notice everything. Of course you do. Kids always know more than adults give them credit for. Zara picked up one of the action figures, examining it with genuine interest. This one looks like he's been through some battles. His name is Defender, Tyler said, scooting closer. He lost his family in a war, so now he protects other people's families. But he has to do it alone because if he gets too close to people, they might get hurt because of him. The parallel to their own family situation was so obvious that Marcus had to grip the doorframe to steady himself. Tyler had created a hero whose tragedy mirrored their own life, a character who carried the weight of loss and the fear of causing more pain. That sounds pretty lonely, Zara said softly. Tyler nodded. But it's safer. For everyone. Maybe, Zara replied. But what if Defender found people who were strong enough to help him carry the weight? What if protecting people didn't have to mean being alone? Tyler was quiet for a long moment, turning the action figure over in his small hands. Do you think people like that exist? I know they do, Zara said with quiet certainty. Sometimes we just have to be brave enough to let them help. Marcus watched this exchange with a mixture of amazement and something that felt suspiciously like jealousy. This woman had been in his house for less than an hour and was already having the kind of meaningful conversation with Tyler that he hadn't managed in months. Do you want to help me set up a new battle? Tyler asked suddenly, his usual guardedness replaced by something that looked almost like hope. I'd love to, Zara said. But I should probably warn you, I take my action figure battles very seriously. Tyler's face broke into the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from him in weeks. "Me too. We're going to get along great." As Marcus watched them begin to rebuild the elaborate scene, repositioning heroes and villains with careful deliberation, he felt something shifting in his chest. For the first time since Elena's death, the house felt alive again. There was laughter floating through the rooms, real conversation happening, and his son was engaging with another human being without walls or weapons. But it wasn't just Tyler who was responding to Zara's presence. Marcus found himself studying the way she moved, the gentle confidence in her voice, the easy way she had made herself at home in their space. She was beautiful, certainly, but it was more than that. There was something about her that made him want to be better, as a father, as a man, as a human being who had forgotten how to connect with the people who mattered most. He was still standing in the doorway 20 minutes later when Mrs. Chen appeared beside him. "She's different," the housekeeper said quietly. "Yes," Marcus agreed, watching Zara explain some complex battle strategy to Tyler, who was hanging on her every word. "She is. Tyler likes her." "More than liked," Marcus corrected. "He's responding to her in a way he hasn't with anyone else." "And you?" Mrs. Chen asked with the directness that came from 15 years of knowing the family's secrets. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "She's here for Tyler," he said finally. "Of course," Mrs. Chen replied. "But that doesn't answer my question." Before Marcus could respond, Zara looked up and caught his eye. She smiled, not the practiced, professional smile he was used to from service providers, but something warm and real that hit him like a physical force. "Mr. Wellington," she called. "Tyler's been telling me about his school. It sounds like he's really smart but maybe a little bored?" Marcus stepped into the room, drawn by the easy way she included him in their conversation. "His teachers say he's gifted but lacks focus." "I think he focuses just fine," Zara said, ruffling Tyler's hair. "He just focuses on things that matter to him. Right, Tyler?" The boy nodded enthusiastically. "School is boring. They want us to learn stuff that doesn't matter." "What kind of stuff matters to you?" Zara asked. "How things work. Why people do what they do. How to tell if someone is lying." Tyler glanced at his father with a meaningful look. "Stuff like that." Marcus felt the familiar guilt settle over him. How many times had he brushed off Tyler's questions because he was too busy with work? How many opportunities for connection had he missed while building his empire? "Those are important things to know," Zara agreed. "Maybe we can find ways to explore them that are more interesting than regular homework." The casual use of "we" made Marcus's heart skip. She was already thinking in terms of staying, of being part of their lives beyond this single afternoon. "Would you like to stay for dinner?" The words left his mouth before he had consciously decided to speak them. "Yes." Tyler jumped up immediately. "Please stay. Mrs. Chen makes the best mac and cheese in the world, and we can watch a movie after." Zara looked between father and son, and Marcus saw something flicker across her expression, a moment of uncertainty, as if she was weighing the wisdom of getting too invested too quickly. "I wouldn't want to impose," she said carefully. "You wouldn't be imposing," Marcus said, surprised by how much he meant it. "Tyler's right about Mrs. Chen's mac and cheese. And it's been a long time since we've had dinner with someone who could carry on a real conversation. Please," Tyler added, his voice carrying a note of vulnerability that made Marcus's chest tighten. "It gets really quiet here at night." Zara's expression softened. "Well, when you put it like that, how could I say no?" Tyler whooped and immediately began planning their evening activities, his excitement infectious. As Marcus watched his son come alive in ways he hadn't seen since Elena's death, he felt something he had almost forgotten how to feel: hope. But underneath the hope was something more complicated, an attraction that had nothing to do with his role as Tyler's father and everything to do with the man he had been before grief had hollowed him out. Zara Johnson had walked into their lives with nothing but a handwritten note and a genuine heart, and already she was changing everything. He just hoped he was strong enough to handle whatever came next. 2 weeks into Zara's employment, the Wellington mansion had undergone a transformation that money couldn't buy. The sterile perfection that had characterized the house since Elena's death was giving way to something warmer, more alive. Children's laughter echoed through hallways that had been silent for too long, and Tyler's artwork had begun appearing on the refrigerator, something that would have horrified the previous nannies but made Mrs. Chen smile every time she passed by. Marcus found himself looking forward to coming home in ways he hadn't experienced in years. Where once the mansion had felt like a beautiful mausoleum, filled with memories of his late wife and the ghost of the family they had once been, now it hummed with renewed energy. The change was entirely due to Zara's presence, and Marcus was beginning to understand that hiring her had been one of the best decisions he had ever made. But it wasn't just Tyler who was responding to her influence. Marcus had started leaving the office earlier, drawn by the sounds of conversation and activity that now filled his home. He told himself it was to spend more time with Tyler, to be more present as a father. But if he was honest, and honesty was becoming harder to avoid around Zara, he was equally drawn by the woman who had somehow made his house feel like a home again. Thursday evening found him arriving home to the sound of Tyler's delighted squeals coming from the kitchen. Marcus loosened his tie as he walked through the foyer, following the noise and the rich scent of something delicious cooking. The scene that greeted him stopped him in his tracks. Tyler was standing on a step stool at the kitchen island, covered head to toe in flour, his small hands deep in a mixing bowl while Zara guided him through what appeared to be bread making. Her own hands were dusted with flour, and there was a streak of it across her cheek that made her look impossibly young and carefree. No, remember what I told you," she was saying, her voice warm with laughter. "Gentle folding, not aggressive mixing. The dough needs love, not violence." "But it's sticky," Tyler protested, though he was grinning from ear to ear. "Of course it's sticky. That's how you know it's working. Here, let me show you again." Zara moved behind Tyler, placing her hands over his much smaller ones to guide the motion. "Feel that? The way the dough is starting to come together?" Tyler nodded enthusiastically. "It's like magic." "Better than magic," Zara said softly. "It's science and patience and a little bit of hope all mixed together." Marcus stood in the doorway, transfixed by the domestic intimacy of the scene. He couldn't remember the last time Tyler had looked so genuinely happy, so completely absorbed in an activity that didn't involve screens or solitary play. But, more than that, he couldn't remember the last time his kitchen had felt so alive with warmth and connection. "Dad!" Tyler spotted him and waved enthusiastically, sending a puff of flour into the air. "Look what Zara's teaching me. We're making bread from scratch." "I can see that," Marcus said, stepping into the kitchen and trying to ignore the way Zara's smile made his pulse quicken. "It looks like you're both wearing as much flour as you're using." Zara laughed, a sound that seemed to light up the entire room. "That's the sign of bread well made. Mrs. Chen was kind enough to let us take over her domain for the evening. She also made sure we had plenty of backup dinner plans," Tyler added confidentially. "Just in case our bread turns out terrible." "It won't," Zara said with confidence. "I can already tell this is going to be perfect. Want to feel, Mr. Wellington?" Before Marcus could process what was happening, Zara had taken his hand and guided it to the mixing bowl. Her fingers were soft and warm against his, and, for a moment, the contact sent electricity shooting up his arm. "Feel how the texture is changing?" she asked, apparently unaware of the effect her touch was having on him. "It's becoming smoother, more elastic. That's the gluten developing." Marcus nodded, though he was having trouble concentrating on anything beyond the feeling of her hand covering his. Her skin was slightly rough from work, real and honest in a way that the manicured perfection of his usual social circle wasn't. "Can you feel it, Dad?" Tyler asked eagerly. Marcus forced himself to focus on the dough beneath his fingers, on the transformation taking place in something as simple as flour and water and time. "Yes," he said quietly. "I can feel it." "Zara says that's what patience looks like," Tyler continued. "You can't see it happening, but if you keep working at it, everything changes." The words hit Marcus with unexpected force. He looked up to find Zara watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read, something gentle and, knowing that suggested she understood far more about their family dynamics than she had any right to after only 2 weeks. "That's right," she said softly, her eyes still on Marcus's face. "Some of the best changes happen slowly, when you're not even looking for them." Marcus pulled his hand back, suddenly, aware that they had been standing closer than necessary, that Tyler was watching them with bright, curious eyes, and that something was shifting in the air between them that had nothing to do with bread making. "I should let you two finish," he said, stepping back. "I need to make some calls." "Actually," Zara said, wiping her hands on a dish towel, "we're done with the hard part. Now we just need to let it rise for an hour, and then we can shape it and bake it. Tyler, why don't you go wash up and then you can tell your dad about the project we're working on for school." Tyler scampered off, still chattering excitedly about gluten development and rising temperatures, leaving Marcus alone with Zara for the first time since she had started working for them. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable but charged with an awareness that hadn't been there before. "He's a remarkable child," Zara said finally, beginning to clean up the flour-covered surfaces with efficient movements. "He's different with you," Marcus replied, watching her work. "More open. Happier. Children respond to consistency and genuine interest. Tyler's been testing everyone who enters his life, waiting for them to prove they're going to leave. When someone stays, when they show up day after day with the same level of care and attention, kids start to trust." "And how do you know so much about children who've experienced loss?" Zara paused in her cleaning, her back still turned to him. For a moment, Marcus thought she might not answer, and he realized he had crossed some invisible line into personal territory. "I lost my mother when I was 9, she said finally, her voice quiet. "Car accident. My father did his best, but 6 kids is a lot for anyone to handle alone. I became the second mother to my siblings, learned how to take care of children who were grieving, scared, and angry at a world that had taken their security away." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "It's not something I usually share with employers," Zara said, turning back to face him. "But Tyler's situation is familiar to me. The anger, the testing, the fear of getting close to people who might disappear, I've been there. I know what it feels like to have your whole world change overnight. Is that why you're so good with him? Maybe. Or maybe I just recognize a kindred spirit." She smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "Loss changes you. It makes you see things differently, value things that other people take for granted. Tyler knows I understand him because I've walked a similar path." Marcus found himself moving closer without conscious thought. "What happened to your siblings? Your family? We made it through. Not without scars, but we made it. My youngest sister just graduated college last month, first one in our family to get a degree. My brothers are all working, all settled. We're close in ways that only shared struggle can make people. And you? What about your dreams, your plans?" Zara looked surprised by the question. "This is my plan, Mr. Wellington. Taking care of children who need someone to believe in them, helping families heal from whatever's broken them. It's not glamorous work, but it's important work." "You could do anything," Marcus said before he could stop himself. "You're intelligent, educated, talented. You could have a career, a life of your own instead of dedicating yourself to other people's children." Something flickered across Zara's expression, hurt, maybe, or disappointment. "This is my life, Mr. Wellington. Caring for Tyler isn't a consolation prize or a temporary stop on my way to something better. It's exactly what I want to be doing." Marcus realized he had offended her, though he wasn't entirely sure how. "I didn't mean to suggest that my work isn't valuable." Zara's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "That because I'm not climbing some corporate ladder or building an empire, I'm somehow settling for less? No, that's not what I meant at all." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, frustrated by his inability to express what he was really thinking. "I just meant that you have options. You could choose any life you wanted. And I chose this one," Zara said firmly. I chose to care for children who need someone to believe in them. I chose to help families find their way back to each other. It's not a job for me, Mr. Wellington. It's a calling." Before Marcus could respond, Tyler came bounding back into the kitchen, his face and hands scrubbed clean, practically vibrating with excitement. "Dad, you have to see what Zara helped me make for my history project. It's going to be the best one in the whole class." The tension between Marcus and Zara dissolved as they both turned their attention to Tyler's enthusiasm. But, as they followed him toward his room, Marcus found himself thinking about what she had said, about calling, about choosing a life of service over personal ambition. It was so foreign to his own experience, his relentless drive for more wealth, more power, more success, that he struggled to understand it. Tyler's room had been transformed. Gone were the sterile educational posters and carefully arranged toys that never seemed to get played with. In their place was a vibrant diorama depicting the Underground Railroad, complete with miniature figures, carefully crafted landscapes, and detailed historical information cards written in Tyler's surprisingly neat handwriting. "Zara helped me understand that history isn't just about memorizing dates," Tyler explained eagerly. "It's about real people who made brave choices. Look, this is Harriet Tubman, and this is the route she used to lead people to freedom." Marcus knelt down to examine the project more closely, genuinely impressed by the level of detail and thought that had gone into it. "Tyler, this is incredible. How long have you been working on this?" "Every day after school for 2 weeks," Tyler said proudly. "Zara says that good work takes time, and that the best way to honor history is to really understand it." Marcus looked up at Zara, who was standing quietly in the doorway, watching Tyler explain his project with obvious pride. There was something in her expression that he was beginning to recognize, a deep, genuine care for Tyler that went far beyond professional duty. "The Underground Railroad was about people helping other people find freedom," Tyler continued. "Even when it was dangerous, even when they could get in trouble, they did it because it was right." "What's the most important thing you learned?" Marcus asked. Tyler considered this seriously. "That being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared. And that sometimes the most important journeys happen in the dark, when nobody else can see you." Marcus felt his throat tighten. Somehow, through Zara's guidance, his son had learned profound lessons about courage, morality, and perseverance, lessons that Marcus had been too busy to teach, too distracted to notice Tyler was ready to learn. "This is remarkable work, son," he said quietly. "I'm very proud of you." Tyler beamed, but then, his expression grew more serious. "Zara says that learning about brave people in history can help us be brave in our own lives. She says that everyone has to make choices about what kind of person they want to be." Again, Marcus found himself looking at Zara, wondering how she managed to weave life lessons into everything she did with Tyler. The woman was teaching his son not just academic subjects but character, resilience, and hope. "She's right," Marcus said, still looking at Zara. "We all have to choose what kind of people we want to be." Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding, perhaps, or a recognition of the choice he was facing. He could continue to keep his distance, to maintain the professional boundaries that his business instincts demanded. Or he could acknowledge what was happening in his heart, the way Zara's presence was changing not just Tyler but him as well. The timer in the kitchen shows that moment to ring, breaking the spell. "Bread time," Tyler announced, racing toward the kitchen with all the excitement of Christmas morning. As they followed him back downstairs, Marcus found himself walking beside Zara, acutely aware of her presence, the soft scent of her perfume mixed with flower dust, the graceful way she moved through his home as if she belonged there. The bread was perfect, golden brown and fragrant, filling the kitchen with warmth and the promise of comfort. As they sat around the kitchen island eating thick slices with butter and honey, Marcus realized that this was what he had been missing in his relentless pursuit of professional success, the simple pleasure of sharing a meal with people who mattered, of watching his son's face light up with pride over something he had created with his own hands. "Zara," Tyler said suddenly, his voice unusually serious. "Are you going to stay with us for a long time?" The question hung in the air, and Marcus found himself holding his breath as he waited for her answer. He realized that Tyler wasn't the only one who needed to hear her promise to stay. I'm not going anywhere, Tyler, Zara said gently. As long as your family wants me here, this is where I'll be. Tyler nodded, satisfied, and returned to his bread. But Marcus saw the way Zara's eyes found his across the table, saw the question in them that Tyler was too young to understand. As long as your family wants me here. The words echoed in Marcus's mind long after dinner was over, long after Tyler had been tucked into bed with a story and a promise that they would make pancakes in the morning, long after Zara had quietly gathered her things and headed to the small apartment above the garage that had become her home. Standing in his empty office, looking out at the lights of Seattle spread below him, Marcus finally admitted to himself what he had been fighting since the day she arrived. He was falling in love with his son's nanny. And, for the first time in 3 years, that didn't feel like a betrayal of Elena's memory. It felt like the possibility of healing, of hope, of becoming the man and father he wanted to be rather than the one grief had made him. The question was whether Zara felt the same way, and whether either of them was brave enough to find out.